Hello and welcome to a tutorial on the animation layers plugin. So when you get the plugin, you have actually 3 plugins. Make sure you install all of them. To install, go to the Utilities tab under Add Plugins and then make sure you select all 3. All right. So to get the plugin, go to Master Plugins here on the Utilities tab and click GL Animation Layers. So you open that, we can close this here. Let me put it this way. So here I have a walk cycle of 60 frames, like that. So now say I want to add another layer to this. I want this animation in a separate layer to the other animations that I'll be doing. So I'll select the entire character, say add new layer, and then I can add a name. I'll name this one walk cycle. Now here you click here to select the selected item only or the entire hierarchy. So I'll do that because I want to select every single item including the bonds. So you can also select specific bonds if you want to. That's actually good for performance issues. In case the performance is quite low, just select specific bonds that you have animated. So in this case all of them are animated, so I'll just go ahead and select that, and you see the progress bar of the loading. When it's done, you have a layer there with a few options here. Okay, so if I play this now, the character will still play as normal. So let's look at some options here. So first of all, there's a solo timeline. If I solo the timeline right now, there are no keyframes because all the keyframes have been loaded into this layer. So once I solo the timeline, I can only see what's in the timeline. So since there's nothing for now, let me unsolo that and let's try to add something to this animation. So at about frame 20 here, let me select a bone and let me try and raise his arms like this, just to demonstrate that I can add some new keyframes here. So since I've only moved these 2 bones, I can select all the bonds as before to add a new layer, but for this demonstration purposes, I will just add a new layer here using those 2 bonds. So I'll call this one raising arms. On this one, I just want selected items only, so I'll click OK. And now I have 2 layers. So what I could do also, I could add another animation here. Let me go to frame 30. And at this point I can bend him over like this. Oh, and by the way, those keyframes from the other bonds have been taken into this layer, raise arms. So here I want to create another layer here. So as you can see, that's the bending. Let me add just those 2 bonds as well. I will name this one bend waist or something like that. Okay, so now I have 3 layers here of the same character. If I want, I can actually add a 4th layer here. Let me just bend his head a little bit, maybe something like that. Okay, so I'll select those 2 bonds as well, or I could still select the entire hierarchy, but I'll just say neck area or something like that. Selected items only, and okay, so now I've got 4 layers here like that. So let me just let me move this out of bone X-ray mode so we can see it much better. So as you can see, there's 4 layers of this character: the walk cycle, raising of arms. So I can mute any of these. So let me select the walk cycle and mute that layer. And as predicted, the only thing now I see is the other layers that are actually working like that. So I can unmute, or I can mute another one like that, then I'll have less motion. Okay, so let me unmute and unmute this one, and I'll get all the motion back. Or I could solo a layer like that, solo the timeline, sorry. So in here, only the keyframes in the timeline are going to play. Now, since there are no keyframes, that's why we are having no motion here. But if you have any motion modifiers on the bonds, soloing the timeline is a good way to get them to actually activate. Now, one more thing you can do is edit a motion. So if I go to walk cycle and select it and just say edit layer, and then I say OK. So what happens now is that if I select this item, you see that the keyframes for the walk cycle are back. So I can add some edits here to this motion and then say OK to save the changes. So here there's an option for clear timeline keys. So this one will clear the keys after I accept the changes. But if I select leave timeline keys, then it's going to leave the keys even when I press cancel. So let me press cancel here to not append the changes, but to just leave the timeline keys like that. I'll just say that. And automatically the solo timeline is selected to make sure that the keys are not doubled up, because the timeline keys have remained. So now, like this, I have my walk cycle back into the timeline in case I need to edit and add it to another layer. All right, so to clear the timeline, if I want to, just say clear timeline, and all the items that are in all of these layers, the timeline will be cleared for those. So let me do that now and clear the timeline. Okay, so now that the timeline has been cleared, nothing here, so I can go back to unsolo and use the layers as playback. So I can go to this bend waist and edit that one as well if I want to, like so. And so now only that layer is in the timeline, so I can edit it if I want to. Now I want it to clear the keys, so let me select an item which has a key here at frame 30 and say cancel, and that key disappears. Okay, so far everything works as predicted. So after you are done with oh, by the way, you can delete a layer if you want to. Just select it and delete. You'll be asked if you want to delete. In this case, I don't want to. And also one more thing we can do, for example, the walk cycle, we can go to the weight curve. If it's selected, click on the weight curve and adjust how much influence we want this to have. So let me just put it at 50% or something like that. And you're going to notice that the walk cycle will be at 50% throttle. So it's not really walking in this state. All right, so you can go back and adjust that keyframe. So I want it back at 100%. So you can create a curve here if you want to slowly ease it in or ease it out as desired. So if I do that, everything is back to normal. So when you are done with everything, you can simply bake everything to the timeline by selecting bake all. So all the timeline keys will be deleted. This is the warning here, so just press OK. And all right, there we go. So now all the keys have been baked into the timeline, and automatically the solo timeline has been selected to make sure that you are not combining the timeline plus the motions in the layers. So that is the final result of that baking. So at this point you can export to FBX or something like that. But excuse me, if you still want to edit and add another layer even after baking, just clear the timeline like that, and all the baked keys will have been cleared from the timeline. Then you can start again and solo this, and you are back to editing your layers. All right, so the link to the plugin is in the description, but this is only for the patrons because they are supposed to do beta testing, so it will be released to the general public very soon after confirming that everything is actually okay. Right, so special thanks to these people on this list here for the support. Thank you. Alright, so if you want to be a patron, just check the link in the description, and or you can just subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.